Good morning, church. It's good to see you. It's Krista from Medway. What I want to share with you today comes from one of my devotions from last week that I read. And this one in particular is Unshakable by Christine Kane. And this devotion is based on Job chapter 26. And the chapter kind of lays out the awesomeness of God's creation. It talks about, how God stretches out the northern skies and he suspends the earth above nothing, and just his power that is shown to us in creation. And it made me think that a lot of times I can fall into, I love to think about like how loving God is, how much his grace, his compassion, his mercy, the joy and the peace that I receive. Those are great things that I think about, but I don't often take time to think about his majesty, his power. And I think for a lot of us, the easiest way to do that is when we are out in his creation, because his creation is a reflection of who he is. So I don't know about you. I know some of you love the ocean or the mountains or flying above the clouds in an airplane. But for me, it has always been the night sky. I don't know if you got to see the Neowise comet this summer or watch the meteor showers, but for me, that is always the easiest way to connect with God's creation in the night sky. And several years ago, we took our kids to Utah, to Bryce Canyon to hike. And Bryce Canyon is one of the best places in North America to stargaze. There is almost no light pollution there, which, no street lamps or street lights, no houses, no factories, no cities to obscure the light of the stars. And so we drove out to Bryce Canyon one night. The moon was not even out. And as soon as we got out of our car and shut the doors, it was immediately dark. It was slightly terrifying. I could no longer see my car. It was so dark, even though I knew I was standing right next to it. And as we stood there and your eyes kind of adjust to the darkness and the stars become brighter, it was just an amazing experience. You can see over 7,000 stars when you stand there. You can see the Milky Way. It was so majestic to me. And so I was trying to think, like, what are some words that I could use to describe that? Because those ultimately describe the one who created that. And there's just not enough words that we have. We're so limited even in our ability to describe it. I wrote down majestic, which means sovereign in power and authority. It's grand, it's beautiful, it's awesome, meaning it inspires awe in us. We just stand there and stare at it in awe. It shows his power. It's everlasting. The idea to me that our stars and our universe are still expanding show the creative nature of God. Brilliance, overwhelming, supernatural, miraculous. But ultimately I came up with the last three words are my favorite. Indescribable, limitless, unfathomable. If you can say that three times. There are just not enough words to describe that to me. And yet the devotion says, our God is not aloof or distant. And it reminded me how I felt in that moment. I felt the vastness of God, the immensity of God, but also the nearness. Somehow in that moment, with none of that light pollution out there in the middle of nowhere, God and those stars felt very near. And so the final point in the devotion is, if you believe that God has the power to create and sustain the universe, then absolutely nothing in your life is beyond his power to mend, to heal, and restore. That verse in Job chapter 26, verse 14 says, after all these things that it talks about in creation, it says, these are but the outer fringes of his work. How faint the whisper we hear of him. What we can see and understand about God through his creation is just the tip of the iceberg. And if you believe that God has the power to create and sustain that, absolutely nothing in your life is beyond his power to mend, to heal, and restore. And I know sometimes that I know God is powerful. I know God has the power to do all of that. But I need to take the time to put that in my heart, to meditate on that, and to remember how majestic, how powerful he is. So that's my challenge to you today, church. Take some time to meditate, not just think about his power, but to just meditate on it and get into your heart. It will renew your faith in his power to do miracles in your life. I love you, church. I hope to